Hi, I'm Wes, this is the Backlog, and this week is all about Pokemon Legends Arceus. I have been hotly anticipating this episode because I love the game and have a lot to say about it, and dreading it because I might have too much to say, which could get boring, and I also might forget something, so I'm going to try and cover all the important bits while omitting the ones that really aren't. Please feel free to chastise me in the comments for any screw ups in either direction. So, Pokemon, magical little creatures that you catch to keep as pets and have battle each other as exercise that they totally definitely love and earn yourself some bragging rights in the meantime. This game takes place in Gen 4's Sinnoh, hundreds of years ago, back when it was called Hisui instead. You're part of the Galaxy Team, a group of foreigners who are trying to build a new home for themselves in the region, and as a part of that, logging the different parts of the area and the Pokemon living there in perhaps the first Pokedex. You're part of the Survey Corps, whose job it is to fill out this encyclopedia. Your base of operations is Jubilife Village, and here you can do things like prep for trips out in the field, grow crops, customize your look, and the like. And when you're ready to venture out, just talk to the guard at the main gate, and you can explore one of the 5 pretty meaty areas that aren't quite open world, but can feel pretty darn close at times. That's the basic setting. I'll discuss more on the story later with appropriate spoiler warnings. Then, once you're out in the field, you can explore and catch Pokemon. There are a few ways you can do this, though none of them are through random encounters. Some of the more docile ones you can just run up to and hit with a ball. Others that are more skittish you might want to hide in grass and sneak up on to catch unawares. Some are aggressive and will attack you if they see you, so you need to battle by sending out a Pokemon and try for a ball when it seems feasible. You have several different types of balls you can use, such as the Standard Poke, Great, and Ultra, as well as heavy balls that don't go as far but have a higher success rate if you can hit the Pokemon from behind, and Sky Balls, which go farther and are used primarily to catch Pokemon out of the air. Pokeballs aren't the only thing you throw, though. You having other tools that you can use to make catching easier, such as food to beta Pokemon, or stuff like Mud Balls to get an aggressive Pokemon to let their guard down and give you a chance to catch them without battling. Catch rates seem much higher, even late game not making regular Pokeballs obsolete. The only thing that I literally could not catch was a Cherim for some harebrained reason, me only getting one through evolution. Occasionally, space-time distortions will form that have rare spawns, but all the wild Pokemon are super aggressive and typically attack in groups, making them harder to catch. There's a few monsters that only appear in these, and they are the most reliable ways to find evolution items as well, so they are worth the risk. On the subject of getting attacked, the player character can take damage either from falling or, more commonly, by being hit by Pokemon. As harm accumulates, the borders of the screen start getting black, then red, then the player falls and gets taken back to the last base camp, losing some items in the process. You can recover from damage by putting some distance between you and anything hostile. The stuff you lost will also spawn in other people's games, and they can find it and send it back to you. Doing this for other people yourself gets you some merit points, which you can trade in primarily for evolution items, that being the second best way to get them. There are several base camps that you can quick travel to rest up, switch out Pokemon, swap out your inventory, or buy basic supplies, so you never have to worry about prepping too much or too little for your excursions. The gameplay has a few flaws, such as some Pokemon having trouble with pathfinding, and you sometimes not being able to warp because the game says a Pokemon is tracking you when there is clearly nothing around. The map is also kind of a mixed bag. You fill it in as you enter a new section, it just being a blocked out, faded chunk before you do so. Pretty standard. When you fill it out, though, that part of the map has a vague label on it, and many kinda bleed together into each other. If you have a location for finding a specific Pokemon, but you can't tell where one area ends and another begins, it can be hard to tell where you're supposed to go. It does tell you when you enter a new area, though it's pretty brief and unobtrusive, so it's easy to miss. Either the option to bring the borders back up, or at least your current location, would have been enough to fix this, though given how much info is on the internet, a bit of research does overcome this pretty easily. Otherwise, the gameplay is great. It's a nice break from the norm, feels much more dynamic, and overall faster. Also, unlike most games in this vein, there really aren't any empty spaces, the land being covered with Pokemon and materials for you to collect. It feels really packed and lived in. Then another important part of the game, battling. It's still turn-based, but with a twist. This time there's a turn order, and different things can lead to it being swapped up. You can use a move regularly, with Agile Style, which boosts turn priority, or Strong Style, which hits harder but could lead to your next turn being farther down the road. Things like priority moves like Quick Attack can also lead to you attacking again sooner. I don't fully understand this if I'm being honest. At first I thought that things like speed would let you just run amok if the difference was high enough, but even with a huge gap, one Pokemon typically goes right after another. The turn order is listed on the top right, and it will make adjustments based off of what option you're currently hovering over, but this doesn't always seem accurate. Sometimes you can switch out and can attack right away, other times it goes right back to your opponent. There is no PvP in this, so I didn't feel the need to look into how this works specifically, but if they do another game in this style, I might do some reading. That does bring up in-game trainer battles. These can be frustrating at times. Levels seem to matter less in this game than in any other. Sometimes, even with a massive gap between levels, the weaker Pokemon can just roll the stronger one. This cuts both ways, as you'd imagine, you sometimes punching way outside your weight class and feeling like a boss for doing so, and other times, getting wrecked by something that should be a no count. As for other trainers, what often happens is, you take out one of their Pokemon. They send out something strong to what you have out, manage to attack twice in a row, and take your guy out. Your party only gets experience once a battle is finished, so typically the earlier in a battle a Pokemon is sent out, the less likely they are to get anything out of it. I'd prefer the standard way of doing things of getting XP after an opponent faints, but given that most experience will come from capturing or fighting wild Pokemon, it isn't the worst thing in the world. Those aren't the only things that have changed though. Some moves have also been switched up to fit the new style. Moves that flinch or slow push back turn priority instead, and some have been completely reworked, like Stealth Rock being an actual attack with an added damage over time effect. Some status effects also work differently. Burn, Poison, and Paralyze are still the same, but Sleep gets turned to Drowsy, sometimes making it so that the Pokemon doesn't attack, and Freeze is now Frostbite and does damage over time. There are no held items or abilities either, so it seems like they got rid of some aspects of combat to make room for others. There's also multi-battles. Kind of. You can only ever send out one at a time, but if you have too much aggro on too many Pokemon, you can end up with a fight with multiple opponents. Some trainers also send out more than one at once, making it weird that you're the only one that has this restriction, but it's probably a gameplay thing. It would likely be a bit too much to try and have to manipulate the turn order for 3 party members at once, and make the turn list too messy to read properly. That said, normally the AI is a lot more lenient when they outnumber you, so it does kinda balance this out. Back to Agile and Strong styles though, your Pokemon can learn moves as they level up, and they master these moves at another level. There's no TMs, but they do have a move tutor that can teach your Pokemon some pretty cool and varied stuff, to really fill out what they can do, and she can also help your Pokemon master a move if you want the styles early, or if it was a taught move at all. And even cooler than that, while you can have only 4 moves at a time like normal, others aren't forgotten but put into a pool that you can switch in and out of at almost any time. It's incredible and really lets you experiment, or just choose a loadout based on your present circumstances, and I love it. It's a shame that there's no PvP, since I would have been quite interested to see what it looks like, but on the plus side, it also means that you don't need to fret over things like nature, IVs, and EVs either. Now for the big selling point, the Pokemon available here. The full dex this time around has 240 entries in it, with an extra 2 mythicals if you have save data for Gen 8 and the Gen 4 remakes. All the Pokemon that debuted in Sinnoh region are here, as you'd likely expect, along with their evolutionary lines, and there's some Pokemon here just because, like Pikachu of course. Still though, this is another thing that you have to get used to, since some Pokemon that used to be rare now just pop up in abundance at easy to reach places, and you can get boxfuls in short periods of time. When I found Carnivine right at the beginning of the second area, it boggled my mind, and the same thing happened again when I found a bunch of Yanma soon after. Then there are the new Pokemon. All are either branching evolutions or regional variants of existing creatures, with the exception of one legendary trio becoming a quartet, and they're okay. I really hate to say this, but with all of them, I feel like I kinda prefer the original, except in maybe one's case. Sure, I use a Hisui and Lilligant for the bulk of the game, and I absolutely adore it, but I still find myself liking the original more. There's almost a part of me that thinks it's better this way, though. All of these variants are extinct in the modern games, and while in a series that commonly revives fossils, them returning isn't unlikely, at the same time, I'd say it's less probable than the forms we originally knew doing so. That said, the fandom is large, so I'm sure many out there will find new favorites. Beyond that, not only do wild Pokemon come in different sizes, which is fun, but there are also jumbo-sized specimen called Alpha Pokemon. These tend to have a special move that you can't get on that mon normally, as well as better stats, and, as you'd probably figure, just give you a bigger pet to accompany you. When first introduced, they're built up as being super tough and hard to capture, but surprisingly, it's not all that hard to get one to stay in a ball. By the end of the game, 5 out of the 6 on my team are all alphas. Not only that, but I think pretty much all but the legendaries can come in alpha size, so rounding out your team with a bunch of Pokemon that loom over you is very attainable. Then there are special Pokemon known as Nobles. Each area has 2 of these, which are larger than life guardians for one of the game's clans, and one of them has always gone into a frenzied state. To quell them, you enter a sort of boss fight where you need to dodge around and throw bombs made of their favorite food. At one point, they should also leave themselves open to being fought by one of your party, and if you can knock them out, they'll be stunned for a period of time and you can just unload on them to wrap things up quicker. On one hand, it is a nice diversion. Each fight is also very different, the first teaching you the basics and everyone after that testing a different skill. On the other hand, some of them don't seem fully thought out and can sometimes seem unfair. I lost the 5th in particular a few times due to sometimes there being less space than others between attacks, though that might have been a processing issue with the Switch sometimes taking longer to load some stuff. And it also feeling like there wasn't enough time to dodge some of the things in general. Then there are just some games that have similar gameplay that just do them better, like I heard someone compare this to Monster Hunter. Overall, they happen just infrequently enough to break up the gameplay, so they're not too horrible even when frustrating. That said, I would not want to play a full game of these sections, not without a lot of tightening up. Then there's the Pokedex, which receives a good deal more attention in this game. It's a lot more in-depth this time around. If you see a Pokemon, you get a grayed out entry in the dex with basic info, such as where you can find it. If you catch one, it gets colored in. This is where you really get started though, as you have to complete several more research tasks to actually fill in the entry. The basics just involve catching it, but various Pokemon have various things that you need to look into, such as seeing them perform a certain move, use a certain style, or catch under certain circumstances. There are different levels to most tasks, and each require more to further fill it in. You don't need to finish all of them, you just need 10 research points for a specific Pokemon, and each task level is worth 1 or 2 points. This is yet another thing I love about the game, since it not only makes sense that you would need to fill out an encyclopedia this far back, rather than have a Pokemon professor with a blank dex, but it also feels like you're actually studying and researching the things you're catching. The part that bugs me is just how it's all laid out. If you're stalking something in the field, you can lock onto them and bring up their entry. However, if you're trying to complete pages for what you have in your party, that means that you have to constantly be flipping through pages to check your progress. You can kinda keep a few things open at once by having just a different page up on each tab, which is broken up by area, but honestly, letting you either favorite entries for quick access or letting you pull up a specific one right from the party loadout screen would go a long way. The other thing that kinda bugs me is the range and difficulty in finishing entries. Some have over half a dozen things you can do for points, with a lot of tasks worth double. Others have 4. There were 2 in particular that, despite being a pair and having the same task, had different point breakdowns that made one a little tricky but doable, and the other one a total headache. I guess I'm just asking for a bit of balancing here, though again, I do love the new Pokédex system, it feeling more meaningful and giving you a constant set of things to do, clearly laid out. The whole game is set up so that you can complete it without needing to trade, even going so far as to making held items necessary for evolutions work more like stones, and adding in a new item that evolves Pokemon that you'd normally need to trade, like Graveler to Golem. At any point that you have a new research task completed, you can meet up with the professor at a base camp and turn in your findings. You get 2 scores for doing so. As you're part of the Survey Corps and completing the Dex is your main job, You get paid for every Pokemon you catch, with bonuses for things like catching a lot in one go or snagging an alpha. With each task completed, your research score goes up, and when your overall level increases, you get a rank increase within the Galaxy team, symbolized by a star. Each star gets you perks, like access to new balls or increasing the level cap of Pokemon that will obey you. Max rank is 10. There are also some nobles that function as ride Pokemon, like from Gen 7. Each serve a specific purpose to help you travel and reach new areas, and most work fine. The item finder, though, is kinda hard to use. It'll give a green signal when you're headed vaguely in the right way, turn red and flash with greater frequency when you get closer, and have an exclamation point over their head when they're there. It doesn't feel totally accurate though, and you can circle the same area over and over again, not seeing the sign that you're there and making you scratch your head, not knowing where you went wrong. Of course, the item finder never seems 100% in these games, so perhaps it should be expected. The noble that essentially uses Surf is also kinda hard to use. First, it's the only mount you can throw things from, making it the primary way to hunt water Pokemon. That said, it makes way too much noise to sneak up on anything, the throwing seems inaccurate, and on top of that, hitting swimming Pokemon is already difficult, since if you aim center mass, you're likely to hit the water around it instead. Still though, these mounts do make travel a lot easier and fun, so overall it is a good inclusion. Then there's the stuff you find. In the field, you can pick up some materials from the ground, have your Pokemon punch trees, boulders, and the like for others, and some are dropped by defeated Pokemon. You can use some of these as is, such as berries, and others are used in crafting. While most things can be bought in shops, if you have the materials, why not craft what you need and save your money to customize your looks, or buy rare items from the specialty merchant? It's simplified enough not to cause frustration, and since you need a recipe to craft, you don't have to worry about experimenting and losing materials. You can also craft in the field if you're running low with what you have on hand, or if you do it at a base camp or at home, you can also use anything you have in storage as well. Very user-friendly. There are also a few collectibles to grab. There are 28 unknown to catch to complete the Mon's entry, one for each letter and 2 for punctuation. They have a separate page with hints for where each of them are, each written in unknown. If you can pick them out, all you need to do is hit them with a ball and it's a free capture. The clues are pretty good. I found a few naturally, then knocked out all but 5 in less than an hour. The last ones, though, I did have to look up, and while 2 I felt like I should have been able to figure out, the others were a little vague. Then there are 107 purple wisps that you need to track down for a quest. There are 20 in each area and 7 in the hub, and you get rewards about once every 10 you find. At first, I loved this, it encouraging and rewarding exploration. It reminded me a lot of the Skulltula quest in Zelda. After a while, though, I did start to have issues. Sometimes these glowing balls of ghostly flame can be seen from leagues off, and you just need to make your way towards them. Others, though, you need to pretty much sit right on top of them to see, making them really hard to track down without luck or combing every square foot of the map. At first, I thought that maybe the proximity you needed to see them lessened the more you got, but nope, some still showed up sooner than others when I knew where to find them. Then I thought maybe it was a day-night thing, and while it certainly is easier to see in the dark, they can still be pretty visible. There's 2 things that I can think of that might have caused this. Maybe some were designed this way to make them harder to find. Or maybe it was a processing problem with the Switch. I'm leaning more towards the latter given that sometimes similar things would happen with Pokemon spawning in at odd distances. While there are certain types of spots that you are more likely to find wisps in, it would still require a staggering amount of exploration to find all these naturally. I would recommend either adding in a color to the item finder to track these down, or just doing a Stone of Agony thing like in Zelda where the controller vibrates if you're close to one. Personally, I found all but 25 of them before I threw in the towel. There are also bits of poetry that you can dig up with the item finder, but these don't net you any bonuses, so I didn't find them all. Regardless, there are guides online, so anyone can find them even if they're bad at scavenger hunts. Now for how it looks and sounds. Nice is the long and short. While it may not be the HD, see every hair and pore sort of affair that some expect from a $60 game, that sort of style doesn't really fit Pokemon in my opinion, and what's here does. The character models look nice, none of that textures and indents just stickered on like I complained about with Shining Pearl, and each model feels fully realized. The environments also don't have the award-winning fidelity, but again, work well for the style and are pleasant enough to look at. The battle animations also seem slightly more dynamic. Pokemon moving around, and while most do have a set animation for most of their attacks, they do typically have a bit more physicality to them. Either that or they use some sort of minimalist technique to make it all seem like there's more to the animations. Then there's character expressions. While some of the side characters have only a few stiff looks they give, some of the mains do actually convey emotions pretty well. This is especially true for the opposite gender avatar that serves as a kind of rival. Them doing stuff like giving you the side eye, squinting and clenching their teeth as they cringe, and sometimes standing agape. It was such a departure to what I was used to and expected that, while not nearly as dramatic, I was reminded of Wind Waker and just wanted to stare at their face and take in what it was telling me. For sound, it's okay. The music is there but very subdued. A lot of the time, you might not even hear it, it's just that atmospheric. Sometimes, though, it will pick up a bit, and you can hear a much more relaxing version of a track from Gen 4, and it can be quite lovely. While I kinda wish for a more pronounced soundtrack, I do know this sort of thing is typical for a more open game, so I won't complain. Besides that, the sound effects work and the Pokemon cries are fine. And then there's voice acting. Yes, this game technically has some. While some spin-offs have had some, and the mainline games have put in voices for Pikachu and Eevee, here they went even more minimal, giving your main character a voice, but only to grunt or gasp while they throw or take damage, and even then only sometimes. I am completely baffled by this. It adds very little if anything, and it's only the bizarre nature of its inclusion that makes it notable. Pokemon have long been criticized for not adding voices, so for them to take out what little they already had in and replace it with something so forgettable is strange to say the least. I'm not upset, just very confused, though good on whoever gets to put this on their resume. Then I need to gripe a bit about the tutorials. I won't complain about them teaching you how to catch Pokemon for the billionth time, since it works differently here. I won't complain about them telling you how to do things that just randomly hitting buttons would have taught you, since everyone is used and clarification can be nice. I won't even complain about the rival giving you tips on catching Buizel after I had already captured 2, since this was due to me exploring and doing things out of order. No, I kinda want to complain about the 2 things the game didn't tell me. The first was how to run. To do so, you have to hold in the movement stick. This is the one button that I constantly forget is a button, so it's the only one I would have actually liked to be informed on. The only reason I found out about it was because my brother told me, after he used it to try and fix some stick drift, and surprise surprise, a new function. The other thing are these huge, cracked boulders that block the way in some areas. I saw them and thought that I would either get a skill, like a new ride Pokemon, or some plot point to clear them. Nope, all you need to do is send out a Pokemon, no matter how piddly, and they'll knock them down for ya. I'm not really sure what the point of blocking off a path that you can just clear at any time is, and I almost wondered if they wanted to include something to specifically break it, but ran out of time and just changed the method on how to deal with it. I only found about this one from a Twitter post where half the responses were calling the feature stupid and the other half were calling those that didn't figure it out dumb instead. Am I dumb? I mean, I don't think I am, but did you figure it out? Either way, if they want to keep the obvious stuff in the tutorial, I can deal with it, I just wish they'd include the less apparent bits. Here's where I talk story a bit. I'm only going to discuss the basic stuff that was either in trailers or the first 30 minutes of gameplay, but if that's too much for you, skip this section. Now then, I do like the setting of the game. While it doesn't specify how long ago exactly, the Sinnoh region of the past is a cool concept, and it's fun to pick out what locations from the modern era equate to what's here by using names, landmarks, or map locations. And speaking of it being hundreds of years ago, I was not expecting what the game immediately hits you with. I figured you were the ancestor of the main characters from Gen 4, but instead, you're somebody sent back by Arceus and given the mission to complete the Pokédex. I thought it was weird at first, given that any old person from back then should have been able to complete the task, given enough motivation, but beyond just the problem of the space-time hole looming over Hisui, there's also just the basic issue of how primitive the people back then were. Sure, they have a working society, a sense of the world at large, and some technology, but Pokeballs are a recent invention, and most people are afraid of Pokemon like rabid wild animals. It makes sense that they'd need to have someone from modern times, where catching and training Pokemon is commonplace, to help speed things along and deal with possibly world-ending problems that only a trainer could accomplish to help get things going. In that sense, the setup is almost kind of brilliant. Then there's the religious aspect, which I was not expecting. There are two clans, Diamond and Pearl. Both worship Sinnoh, but the first believe that they are a deity of time and the other one of space. The Galaxy team has brokered an uneasy peace between them, but they are still quick to insult those from the other faction. This was another interesting hook, and I found myself quite curious as to what I would have thought playing through the game and not knowing Sinnoh's mythology. Either way, the Galaxy team is made up of a bunch of immigrants from other regions, and the two clans seem to be trying to keep on their good side, most likely for their interest in their technology, and for also trading purposes. Many of the characters here are also ancestors of those from the mainline games. Some of them I could pick out, others not so much. I looked up a few videos and they agreed on some, but others not, so there was a large part of me that wants official confirmation. Like how there's that one pink-haired medical corps member that I thought was an ancestor to Nurse Joy, but people say it's Mira's. Or Arita, the leader of the Pearl clan that looks kinda like May from Gen 3 and Serena from Gen 6. Though I guess in both cases, both could be right. Ancestry is not a straight line after all, they could branch. Then there's the weird connection people are making, like one video saying Professor Lavington is the ancestor of Leon and Hop, which, I mean, I can't say with 100% certainty that they're not, but I'm not really seeing it. And then there's the two characters that seem to be ancestors of a particular one from Gen 4. Are they related? I guess their lines could intertwine as well, but I'm curious for how it works. Also, whether one of them are single. Please, I need to know if they're available. Though that does bring up something curious with the Pokemon franchise in general, and that's how bad they are at conveying age. The woman I'm talking about has white hair, and she talks like she's quite old, but she looks like she's in her 30s, maybe 40s. I'm kind of reminded of Drosna from Gen 6, who looked like she could have been anywhere from her late 20s to early 70s. Here, you're supposed to be 15, despite being a dead ringer from the 11-year-old pro tag of Gen 4. Even in the anime, there's Brock who looks like an adult, but when he stands next to an actual one, and only comes up to their chest, maybe shoulders, his age becomes clear. It can be very confusing, though this is really just a tangent. So, here's my final thoughts. I love this game. It is probably my second favorite entry into the series, only after the Gen 7 ones, Sun, Moon, and Ultra. While I did have some complaints, I consider them more nitpicks and a few rough edges to be sanded off to take something great and make it truly exemplary. I was kind of worried at the beginning that I wouldn't like this game because I don't normally do this genre, like I said last week, but ended up really sucking me in. Too much, one might say. I stayed up later than I intended, I neglected stuff I was supposed to do, and I got behind on both my reading and anime. I'm doing one more stream, likely tonight, to finish things out by getting the last wisps, grabbing the mythical that I get a quest for with Sword and Shield save data, and seeing what awaits me when I complete my decks. I'm not sure how much I'll play it though after I'm done. There's no breeding, so I can't do Masuda method. There's no PvP, so I can't lie to myself and say that I can raise some Pokemon for that. I'll be sad once I'm done, but I really do need to get my life back under control, so it's probably for the best. There was also really only one thing that disappointed me, and that was that YouTube spoiled one boss fight with a thumbnail that would have been really surprising to see naturally, and I was playing the game an unhealthy amount, so somebody got it out there really early. Asshole. I really hope Game Freak keeps this going as a side series. They might need to change some things up since different regions have different legendaries and different myths, but seeing something like the clash between Groudon and Kyogre, or my personal wish, visiting an older Alola and combating the original Ultra Beast Incursion and Necrozma. I was really beginning to lose faith in Game Freak, with Sword and Shield seeming half-assed and Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl just being farmed out. I didn't think they could innovate and would just continue to do the bare minimum because they could get away with it, but this really blew me away, and while I may view Gen 9 with some suspicion, I think I'm willing to give it a go. The game also gets major props by being the first to not include a damn Charizard. I didn't even think spin-offs have managed this. Oh, and in case you're wondering, there is one record of somebody sleeping with a Pokemon in this game. I'm not going to tell you the specifics, just tell you to keep your eye out, and if you still can't spot it, I'll probably put it in a highlights clip this week, so look forward to it. And that's Legends Arceus. I had a lot of fun, but it kinda kept me from taking anything off the backlog. Then again, I did finish it in under a week, so I don't have to add it either. Thank you if you sat through this big review, and next week will be business as usual, so maybe subscribe if you want a more casual log of what I've been playing.